Buenas, Curiosidad Cientifica. Welcome everybody to Scientific Curiosity. Today we're speaking in English because I have one of the people, the persons, the communicators in the field that I do, like science communicator, that I admire a lot. Because every time I see his videos or his content, he is not shy to be aggressive, I could say, against people that is just bullshit online and trying to miscommunicate and bring false information. And for me, it's a awesome and wonderful day because I have one of the people that I think in this era is doing the science communication that maybe Carl Sagan and maybe Bill Nye and all these guys were doing. And today I have the honor to have Dave Farina. Dave,
Howdy.
how are you, man?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I told you a minute ago, I'm pretty excited. I have you here, and the other big guy I have, like you, is Neil deGrasse Tyson. So it's kind of a dream come true to have two of
Cool.
my most,
Happy to be on that list of two.
Yes, the other one will be Bill Nye, but that's really hard reach.
Yeah.
Man, I like I said before, I really admire your work, and I've been doing this science communication for about 5 years, a little bit over 5 years. And I also been involved with a volunteer with NASA, Science Eastern Ambassador. So I go to schools and this and that to communicate science and do presentations and that. But one particular thing about you is you are huge, like really big in YouTube. But what exactly, how would you describe the science communication that you do? How would you describe that?
So it's an interesting situation. I have kind of a hybrid career thing that I do because I started out just making curriculum aligned academic tutorials for students. So for high school and undergrad students, I make chemistry content, biology, mathematics, physics, etc. They're really just for students trying to pass their classes, and then ideally some inquisitive lay people maybe will take a look, but it's not pop sci. You know what I mean? My tutorials they're relatively rigorous, at least enough for 101 level undergrad courses, and but then and I've been doing that since 2015. Then around 2020, I started getting into the debunking space. So this stuff has like a more, it's got a broader appeal. So I have sort of these two audiences, and there are people who watch my tutorials that have no idea that I debunk all these other things, and then there's people who catch onto my debunks and they go, "Wait, what is he doing? He's doing all these chemistry tutorials and things." So there's a lot of confusion, I think. But yeah, those two things together. I mean, because I already had 5, 6, 700,000 subscribers when I started doing debunks, so that's why they got a lot of traction really fast, because the algorithm was already used to kind of highlighting my content. So when I started doing flat Earth debunks, that was the first thing I debunked. I just got catapulted. Like I was instantly the most popular flat Earth debunker because my channel already had a lot of momentum. So yeah, for 4 years now, I guess, I've been debunking flat earthers, creationists, all kinds of pseudoscience and charlatans and all those things. And getting a little bit of a reputation for it. So yeah.
Yes, I seen a lot of huge channels, like TV channels and other big, people in the news communication. And I was like, wow, I already like you and what you're doing, but they even bring you to do talks now and debunk or have conversations with another people, like people talking about evolution, and they want you to explain evolution in another way and try to bring their personal beliefs into the science or whatever they think is science, especially like religious people. But to me, one thing that actually I I don't think I ever seen one of your videos like talking about like simple biology and things like that for maybe younger generations. But I see a lot of the videos that you have this conversation with these flat earthers, like for example, and you are not shy on telling them how dumb they are.
Yeah.
And it is hard
Well,
for me. Like I have people that, you know, I bring to the podcast. So I have like a little more pop conversation, you know, because
yeah.
they believe some things, and you try to mix it with like the you know, like the popular people, and it's hard for me to tell them like, nah, you dumb.
Well, to be clear, it's not just them being dumb. They are grifters. They're frauds who lie. So both of those debates I had on the flat Earth, both of those people know perfectly well that the Earth is not flat.
Hmm.
Right? This is a grift. They use this to make money. So they're terrible people. They deserve to be humiliated publicly,
Okay, yeah,
and have their
yeah.
their method of grifting taken away from them. It's not like I go door to door and knock on the door and say, "Hey, solve this chemistry problem." And if they can't do it, I go, "You dummy! You're so dumb." No, it's not like that, right? I don't want to mock people for being unintelligent. There are plenty of people who perhaps are even rather unintelligent, or at least just ignorant and perhaps don't understand science. But
Hmm.
as long as you're not asserting your ignorance over the body of scientific knowledge, that's okay. I don't know how to fix a car, right? If somebody said you're an idiot, you don't know how to fix a car, well, all right, I didn't learn that, you know what I mean? But I
Hmm.
don't go to the auto mechanic and say this is all lies from the government. This isn't how
Exactly.
cars work, right? I accept that they know how to fix the car, and I let them do that. So it's not about stupidity or ignorance. It's just it's more about willful ignorance and lies, charlatans, liars, grifters, frauds who need to have their influence neutralized. So that's what I do.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, literally, like these people are just gaining money, like some
Yeah,
churches or whatever. They
sure.
just, you know, like lie to the people and just
Yep.
convince them to this. So it's kind of like a cult or whatever they
Mm-hmm.
created to gain
Yeah.
power and money. Oh, wow, yeah.
Flat Earth is very much a cult. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's great. I have a few things here that I want to communicate with people anyway, like that.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a science communicator, and you have done some presentations in over 13 plus uh, places in pretty much in the United States. But I
Mm-hmm.
see you being in Nerd Night, and I've been in Nerd Night,
Oh, cool.
and I see you being in UC Irvine, and I have a pretty good friend there, Daniel Whiteson. He's a particle physicist.
Oh,
I
cool.
don't know if you know him, but I don't know. I just want to
I
bring
do not.
that up.
Yeah.
But then I realized you're a book author, and your book is called "Is This Wi-Fi Organic? A Guide to Spotting Misleading Science Online."
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that book and where the people can find that book?
So, oh, that's all. I mean, Amazon or anywhere you buy books online, pretty much. Yeah, that was just a publisher. Mango Publishing approached me. They kind of got into the habit of approaching relatively large YouTube channels and asking if they
Mm-hmm.
want to write a book. And it happened to be the case that I sort of had an idea for a book. I wanted to combine these two things. So remember a moment ago, I told you I make academic tutorials explaining basic scientific information, and I debunk pseudoscience. And I thought maybe there's a way I can marry the two and sort of offer very, very brief, succinct, tight, clear expositions on basic chemistry, biology, etc. So here's 15 pages that's going to summarize chemistry 101 as
Okay.
best I can. And now let's take what we just learned and let's look at these claims that these people on the internet say. This is what here's how we know they're wrong, even just from these 15 pages we just talked about, right? This is how molecules work. So this is how we know they're lying. And so I do that for, chemistry, biochemistry, biology, and physics. And just sort of my little bit of effort to sort of I'm trying to rehabilitate public science literacy. My great wish is for the entire global public to have a very basic understanding of high school level chemistry, biology, and physics, right? Just the basic stuff, And so that's kind of my first major effort into that arena.
Wow, that's great. That's one thing I started doing this because my audience in Spanish. So my podcast, is scientific curiosity, but it's because for me, when I was growing up, I didn't knew that I could be a physicist or I could be
Hmm.
I don't know, an engineer or even biology. It wasn't, you think that you need even to write books. I have like 5 books out right now, and one of them is basic physics, basic like
Hmm.
how light works and how particle works. And
Hmm.
actually, the name of the book is The Universe in Rice and Beans, because we're Latinos. So, but I mean, what you just said is so big for me because I literally start doing this because there is not enough science communication in Spanish at all.
Right.
Like if you go
Yeah.
to Puerto Rico, where I am from, you barely see scientists or physicists that are highlighted in our country. You a lot of them they work in NASA and in huge places and Honeywell and whatever, but you don't talk about them. You don't talk
Right.
about them a lot, and that's one thing. Like for me, Carl Sagan was the guy who was talking about science in a actual way that everybody could understand and everybody could like think about it and change their perspective on how things work.
Yeah.
And that what you're explaining in your book is phenomenal. I really love that, so I will
Thank you.
have to get it. With that said, one major issue for me is how can someone be an efficient or scientific communicator? Because sometimes it's hard. Like
Yeah.
if I explain in physics and I'm explaining like how the quarks and nuclear forces work and this and that or entropy, it's hard. So I have to be pretty conscious about what words I use to explain certain things. How can we be
Yeah.
efficient?
That's a very good question. Unfortunately, that's like the one aspect that's the hardest to teach because it's just something like when come up with an analogy or something, it's like it's like a moment of artistry. Like you can't really explain artistic
Hmm.
inspiration. You know what I mean? It just kind of there's these things that just kind of come. But I guess I did teach in the classroom for a while, so that's sort of like the grounds where you kind of see what works, and if everybody seems to understand something you're saying, then that's probably a pretty effective way of explaining things. I don't know. For me, yeah, the main thing I taught was organic chemistry, and so I had a lot of experience with that, and over 4 years or so was able to craft my lectures until they were very, very, very effective because I was getting constant feedback from the students and everything. And yeah, I don't know. That's the kind of thing where you practice and you find your own voice.
Just keep doing
You
it.
know, yeah.
Nice. And how can we realize because this happened like in my case I read a lot and I try to understand the papers, and even though I've been doing this for over 5 and plus almost 6 years actually, uh sometimes you read some documents and you don't completely understand them. And what would you do, or what do you do, because you're a professor anyway, like
Hmm.
you pretty much have everything grinded like what way you're going to go. But when you explain something out of that, how you don't mislead people, because sometimes I could explain something about a wave. Like the other day I have a conversation because I was kind of debunking like the Howard Terrence guy, but
Yeah.
for another friend in Spanish, and
Hmm.
in actually in the past 2 episodes ago. And I tried to explain to him that it's not the same like sound waves with like pulses or
Right.
waves like electrons, and
Yeah.
it is not the same like when you
Light
try
is not
to
sound.
like exactly.
Yeah.
But when I like sometimes if I try to explain to people about like the wave function or whatever, people will think about like sound, or will think, I don't know if I am explaining the question
Sure,
well, but
sure. Well, yeah, so I mean, you're asking two different things. I mean, one is whether, making sure that my information is accurate. The second is how to best explain things, how to best break things down. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I mean, for your first question, there are multiple ways of looking at it. Like if I am making a debunk that involves looking at primary scientific literature, if I'm having trouble with the paper, I've found that you can actually just email the author and ask them questions. So I've actually been because I did a lot of this work for origin of life research for debunking a particular creationist chemist about that content. So I actually developed relationships with many origin of life researchers just from corresponding
nice.
with them by email. Then for content, like if I'm making academic like geology or ecology virology content or something like that, I actually hire writers who are, are doctorates or doctoral candidates in that field, and they write the scripts for me for that. Then in terms of like, then there's other stuff. I did a Terrence Howard video as well, and
Yeah, I see you did too. Really
it's
wonderful, man.
pretty
Because it was
popular. Yeah.
first him, and then him with another guy who defended, and him with the other mathematician that
Right.
he would.
I made one on Weinstein with
I
Terrence,
think he's
and
a little bit, I don't know, like jealous of deGrasse
well,
Tyson. I don't know. It
yeah,
was,
no, there's a lot going on there, and in fact, I'm going to do a video on him exclusively and his
yeah,
brother, because they're both gigantic frauds.
yeah.
But yeah, with the Terrence stuff, like that is a case where 1 times 1 equals 2. We all know 1 times 1 equals 1. So now the challenge is, how do you break that down? How do you break down, wave conjugations, this kind of stuff? Like, how do you make that as clear as day for the average person that Terry doesn't know what he is talking about at all? So that is more of a unique challenge. And I mean, some things, like, it's hit or miss. I look back on videos, like even that one, and I think there are moments where I kind of missed it, didn't quite do as well as I could, and then there are other moments where, like, I knocked that out of the park. Everybody watching understands what I'm saying and that he is wrong. So it's just practice. I mean, I'm doing this over and over and over again. I've done so many of these debunks now. I know how my brain works. I know when I'm watching the video what I want to say, how I want to say it, how I want to represent it visually, which is another extremely important aspect, because when people hear you speaking and then they see select keywords written and highlighted at key times, coupled with a very simple and effective visual element, those three things together do something to the brain that conveys comprehension. It bestows comprehension. It's those three things, because you get the auditory learner, you get the visual learner, you get it's doing everything at the same time. And so that's something that I had always done with my tutorials, with math and stuff. Like, you write it out and you highlight the part that you're talking about so that the eyeball goes right to what you're trying to explain with a picture and everything. So I just kind of carried that over to the debunks, and again, try to make it as simple to understand as humanly possible. So
yeah, I at some point he says something about supersymmetry. I have nothing to do with molecules. I have to do with freaking quantum mechanics and
exactly,
and the other particles that are supposed to have pair of the same kind of particle. And
right.
And I was, why are you talking about supersymmetry? Talking about waves that actually just function together. No, man, it's so hard to. That's why we use a collider to freaking move particles so fast to try to to get that together.
Or the Dewey Decimal System, right? Oh, so when he says these things, I mean, that's one approach, is to just say, wow, he just said that. This is what that word means. So what is he talking about, right? Just display the complete idiocy of what he's trying to say.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. One other thing I want to talk is how simple. Well, it's kind of like the question I asked you before, but do you feel like sometimes because you kind of told me before that that's something that your brain works that way and you know where you're going with, but for the for the explanations that you do for maybe like the schools, are you aware of like changing to a simple way to explain things that maybe use different words? Because for me, the other day I did a presentation about DART, double redirection asteroid test, and I have almost the same presentation for the school, but it was like a elementary school, so I have to switch a lot of things and just use simple words, because I don't know if all of them know what what will mean, like the forces or things like that, or the gravity. Like, do you use the same method for older people or regular community? or you
Sure.
changed your stuff for younger people?
Sometimes, I mean, I don't pander, but I mean, learning should be iterative usually. So the thing is that if there, I think we've all had this experience when we were students and we're in a lecture and they're talking about something and there's just one little thing that you're missing or that you forgot, some one little bit of foundational knowledge that you either didn't learn or you forgot,
Hmm.
that is preventing you from following along the lecture. And then just a few steps later, you're like, well, now I'm so lost that now I'm going to tune out and I just don't care about this. So I try to be acutely aware of any regions where that foundational knowledge might be required. And, organic chemistry, you frequently have to remind uh, people of simple general chemistry concepts, acid base reactions or molecular geometry or hybridization or these kinds of things. So I just ensure, I try to be very cognizant of, in order to understand this, what are all the things that they need to have already understood. And we're not going to go all the way back to 1 + 1 = 2, but we're going to maybe go one step back and just say, okay, remember, this is an sp2 center, so it's trigonal planar. So that's why when the nucleophile attack, you know what I mean? You just
Hmm.
go back one step, make sure everybody's with you. We're all starting from the same place. Now you all have access to this additional, explanation of this new thing that I'm offering you. Um, so that's one thing. I mean, just clarity, succinctness, no extraneous information. There's just a lot of stuff that over time you kind of pick up and it just all crystallizes,
Yeah, I
Mhm.
notice that if I don't understand whatever I'm talking about 100%, I will not be able to communicate it. Even if
Mhm.
I know a lot about parts of it, if I don't understand it completely, I rather won't even try to explain what is going on.
Mhm.
So since you know about chemistry and biology, I want to touch points about vaccines that are being pretty controversial, and I know by fact, like at some point these doctors that they are in jail right now, they spread misinformation about vaccines and about they were harming people. And for sure in history, some governments were giving different kinds of vaccines to, like in my case in Puerto Rico, they were giving anticonceptive like giving vaccines to women so they wouldn't have kids, because they said that Puerto Ricans were like rats, kind of like we don't want them to spread. So they
Mhm.
put vaccines in women so they couldn't have children's.
Wow.
But still, like in this day and era, I think it's pretty open. And you can find the information about how vaccines works. But if you can explain us a little bit about like how vaccines works and how important it is. And another thing that you can debunk is because the other day I was talking with my cousin actually, and she said like, oh, everybody's having like the cancer. It's more cancer around there here, and even more kids are born with syndromes and things like that. And I kind of told her like, I don't know for sure, but what I know is that we have way better technology to know who have like any conditions that before. That's why before, if you were a problematic kid, that your mom will slap the shit out of you so you could stay put or whatever. And now we can, take you to the doctor and they could check if you have
Sure.
any kind of. So if you can talk about,
Progress.
yeah, exactly.
Vaccines, sure. I mean, so straight up, the briefest explanation of how vaccines work is that if you get a viral infection, we have an immune system, right? So there are components of the immune system that interact with virions, and then so that will elicit the primary immune response, and so they will interact with proteins on the envelope of the virus, and then they'll go back to the lymph nodes, and then the cells will interact, and they will produce antibodies that will then be able to go and kill the viruses. But the thing is, that whole process takes 4 or 5 days.
Hmm.
So in that time span, you've become infected by the virus and you could be potentially very, very ill and also be infecting other people.
Hmm.
So what the vaccine does is it artificially prompts the primary immune response. So In the past, we had taken viruses and attenuated them, so we made them unable to act.
Kind
So
of weak, with any
yeah,
kind of a word,
yeah.
whatever.
So an attenuated virus or a viral particle. Also, we would
Hmm.
take just the envelope protein
The
itself
proteins.
and put that in there. And so then everything, right, it's just a protein, but it is the antigen. It is the
Hmm.
thing that the immune system is going to recognize and respond to. So the point is that we inject something into the human body that elicits the primary immune response such that the necessary antibodies are produced, so that if the body ever comes into contact with that virus, it has antibodies ready to go. And so then it can go, when antibodies interact with that antigen, it's a signal, and then macrophages come and destroy the invading entity. So just everything can happen really fast. The immune system can work right away and kill the viruses, as opposed to waiting this 4 or 5 day time period for antibodies to be produced. So that's really all it is. And so again, classically, it had been attenuated viruses or viral particles. The new thing now is with these mRNA vaccines. So what people don't really understand is that they will say, oh, it's not a vaccine, it's gene therapy, or it's not, it's experimental, blah, blah, all this stuff. Yes, it is an innovation, but it's really not very different, because, as we said, we would inject the viral protein. Well, what we've done instead is this mRNA transcript in our body's transcription and translation. So the DNA is read to a gene is read to make an mRNA, and then the mRNA is translated to make a protein. So here, this foreign mRNA is translated into the viral protein. So instead of injecting the viral protein, we inject viral mRNA, which is translated to make the viral protein. So it's just one extra step, and we're just getting the viral protein that way so that it can interact with that and generate the antibodies. And so the reason this is brilliant is because in the past we've made mistakes, right? People have injected what they thought were attenuated viruses that actually weren't. So like there was a whole batch of polio vaccines where they just gave people polio.
Oh,
They
wow.
didn't properly attenuate the virus, so they just injected them with polio.
Oh, God.
Like it's, and so this is a very good. This is a very interesting innovation, because there's no viral particle being injected. There's nothing.
It's just
There's
the
no particle.
information. Yeah, pretty
Exactly.
much.
Yeah. So that's, and then just there's so much paranoia. There's so much anti-establishment sentiment, anti-government sentiment, and at times for very good reasons. As per the example that you outlined earlier, sometimes governments do horrible things. And so it's just that the public, the global public, is having a hard time not transferring that distrust of authority and distrust of governing bodies onto the body of scientific knowledge itself. So, mRNA vaccines are not gene therapy. That's a fact, right? That is a scientific fact. People just don't know what gene therapy is. What a government does, right? What's in the vaccine, all these other things, that's trickier to get into, right? But I want to impart on people at least the basic understanding of biology, to where they can understand what is an mRNA vaccine. What is it even, right? We have to start from that place of understanding before we can then say, okay, have there been side effects? Are there more side effects than with other vaccines, et cetera, right? We need to at least know what we're even talking about, what all of these words mean. So
Yeah, one thing that people said too is that, oh, if I'm vaccinated, why I got sick? And sometimes they don't understand that the vaccine is not like magically taking away your system completely.
yeah.
It's just that it will defend you. So if you get sick, you probably won't die. And then another thing, since the vaccines are just working, and then the immune system is attacking the vaccines really early in the process that you get infected, then it won't be time enough for the vaccine to evolve and then mutate and then spread even
Right.
farther too. So
Yeah, that's what people don't understand, right? Because we're injecting a specific mRNA transcript which codes for a specific envelope protein.
hmm
So there will be antibodies generated to react towards that particular antigen.
hmm
If the virus mutates sufficiently that the envelope protein is no longer recognized by that antibody, that vaccine is not going to work for that new strain of the virus. And so with COVID just was continues to mutate very
hmm
rapidly, more rapidly than other viruses. Why? I don't really know, honestly. I could look into that. But for whatever the case may be, it happens to mutate more rapidly than other viruses. So we had so many different strains. So when it came around to that Omicron wave that everybody got, right? I got it. I only got COVID one time, but it was that one after having gotten vaccinated for previous strains. It's because the virus has changed so much that the antibodies produced are no longer able to recognize that envelope
hmm
protein. So that's the whole point that people aren't understanding about herd immunity. Why do I need to get vaccinated?
Booster.
Maybe even I already got infected, so I have natural immunity, et cetera, because we're trying to confer immunity to all of these strains, right? Anytime you're getting infected, you have the potential to spread that virus to other
hmm
people. You are part of a host pool that is allowing the virus to continue to proliferate and giving it as much time as possible to mutate and generate other strains. So, unfortunately, if the entire world had gotten vaccinated immediately right when the vaccines
Yeah,
were available, it just would have slowed the spread so
so
much
much. Yeah,
and curbed the development of new strains, largely, if not entirely. But that's just not the world we live
yeah.
in.
Sadly,
It's certainly not in America, but yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. One thing that I can probably add there too is like people think um got people think that when you get infected or maybe the virus, whatever virus you get, virus don't really want to kill you. They want to
Hmm.
survive because if they kill you, they die. So
Right.
that's what they do. They evolve. That's why sometimes they say like, oh, but more people will die because of the vaccines, and if you get like herd immunity, yeah, but more people will die because it will evolve more. So we need to
Sure.
stop that. We need to stop that because the virus will kill less people to have the chance to mutate and spread even more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people don't realize that.
Yeah, and potentially generate an extremely deadly strain. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
definitely not impossible. I mean, a virus is not sentient. It doesn't know what it's doing. It just sometimes, the Black Death and stuff, it happens,
Uh-huh.
and that wiped out like 30 or 40% of the human race, the human species in the Middle Ages. And so, it's
And
just
even
something
a
like that
hundred
can happen again. It
even a
absolutely
hundred
can.
years ago, like
Spanish flu.
the Spanish flu, and people like I read some articles about like what happened with Spanish flu. It was just like really bad, whatever amount of time, and suddenly stops. And it's like yeah, because it kills so much people that
Right.
it kills itself pretty much, So
Yeah.
that's why they will evolve. One thing, since you are the guy to ask about this field, what is life? Because sometimes when since we're talking about virus, sometimes people don't realize if virus, or that's the question, if virus are alive or not, because they don't breathe, so they need another organism to mutate or put their information so they could spread. Like, are virus alive or not? And in your case,
Right.
what is alive?
Yeah, so most biologists agree that viruses are not alive, and it's not just because they require a host cell to reproduce. I think the main characteristic of life that viruses lack, and in fact, I would argue the most important feature of a living system is metabolism, chemistry, right? A living system is a vibrant, dynamic system where chemical reactions are occurring at all
Happening there.
times in every cell of your body and in a bacterial cell, whether it's unicellular or trillions and
Multicellular.
trillions and quadrillions of cells. Every single cell, there's chemistry happening, right? There's material intake. It expunges material inside the cell. There's molecules being broken down. There's molecules being built. It's happening all the time. It's a dynamic system. Viruses are not like that. They're just inert little sacks of genetic material. So you just have this little pod with
Mm.
RNA or DNA genome in it, and it just floats around. And if it gets into a cell, then the cell does what it does with that material. So it's not alive because it's not doing anything, you know. It's obviously much more complex than like a rock or something, but there's no chemistry happening. So living systems, there's chemistry. There's a lot of
Oh,
things happening.
so I could say, because I really don't know anything about this subject, but well, I know a little bit, but I could say like maybe like the virus is like having the nucleus of a cell without the rest of the cell, kind of, or no, or that's a bad description.
Well, no, I mean, even in the nucleus, there's tons of chemistry going on, right? There's
Hmm.
transcription, you know, there's all kinds of things going on in the nucleus of a cell. I mean, they're lifeless because they're inert, right? It's
Hmm.
just, you know, there's different kinds of viruses, but yeah, it's some kind of envelope, some kind of casing, protein
Yeah,
casing with genetic material inside. That's it. It just floats
yeah,
around
yeah.
until it hits the cell, and then if it's lucky, right, the cell
We
takes it
will
in,
get to.
and
Oh wow, wow,
yeah,
that's so interesting. I have no idea about that.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about evolution, because I
Hmm.
hear one presentation that you were arguing with another guy. He was a pretty religious guy, and the fact that we have so much proof about evolution, and even in DNA, we can prove like we're so close to like chimps and bonobos.
Hmm.
It's kind of blow my mind that still people don't believe in evolution. What would you say to those or that don't believe in evolution still? Or they say, I cannot be a monkey.
Yeah, well, it's hard because there's people are coming at it from different places. So the bottom of the barrel is I didn't come from a monkey, right? Really, that person doesn't understand even the first thing. They don't understand sixth grade level biology, right? Then there are other people who kind of better understand what evolutionary biology dictates, but then reject it for other reasons. So you kind of have to come at, you know, if you're talking to the I didn't come from a monkey person, you go, yeah, you didn't,
Mhm.
right?
It's a new
We
species.
yeah, we and monkeys have a common ancestor,
Hmm.
which is about 20 to 30 million years ago, and we're also not the most closely related to modern monkeys. We're more closely
Hmm.
related to apes. In fact, we are
Apes.
apes.
Hmm.
So we are most closely related to, as you said, chimps and bonobos. There's about 98.8% genetic similarity there, and so I mean, okay, there's one way. There's several ways to go about it. First of all, if you're just talking about genetic similarity, okay, how does a paternity test work? How do you determine who
Hmm.
somebody's father is? Genetic
Yeah,
similarity,
genetic similarity.
right?
Yeah, and they always say like 99.9 because you will have
Yeah.
some genes, that are belong to the other person or whatever.
Sure. But obviously, yeah, they can, with extreme certainty,
Yeah,
use the
really high.
principle of genetic similarity exclusively to
Hmm.
determine paternity. So you can look at who your father is and your father's father and your father's father's father.
Oh
So
yeah.
where is this arbitrary line? How many generations back can you go where that's reliable, where it magically suddenly does not become reliable, such that genetic similarity does not dictate some kind of lineage or common origin? So that's one thing that usually shuts them up to an extent. But the other aspect is the not coming from a monkey people. They don't really understand like the phylogenetic tree of life. They
Hmm.
don't understand that there were common ancestors between any two animal species somewhere far in the past that didn't look like either of
Hmm.
the extant species today, that then diverged. And then as you go along those branches, they became more and more dissimilar until they produced what is around today. And so you can do that with humans and chimps, and you only have to go back about 5 million years or 6 million years or something like that. And because we remain pretty morphologically similar, humans
Oh
and chimps
wow.
are very similar, right? We have the exact same body plan and
Hmm.
limbs and everything, and in fact,
Yeah,
very
even
similar
hips,
behavior.
the difference is more like bigger hips or whatever, but it's almost the same exact.
That's right. The thing is that bipedalism emerged. So on the branch to modern humans, the apes became more and more upright, and so now we walk
Hmm.
completely upright. So there are things, but so they don't understand the dozens and dozens of species that are on that branch from the most recent common ancestor with humans and chimps, leading to humans. They don't know about Sahelanthropus chidensis and Paranthropus and Ardipithecus and the
Uh-huh.
20 different Australopithecus
Hmm.
species, and then Homo erectus,
Homo
Homo
erectus.
habilis,
Uh-huh.
et cetera, right? We have all these specimens and we know very clearly what their physiological features were, and all the intermediary characteristics where they retained some aspects that look more like what chimps look like, and then while bipedalism emerged and things like that. So they don't understand those gradients. What they think, they don't understand that there were different animals before. So they
Hmm.
think what evolution means is that some animal that exists today was supposed to either magically morph into or give birth to another animal that exists today. So they
Yeah.
genuinely think that evolution says an elephant should give birth to a hedgehog, right? Or something
Uh-huh.
like that. So they don't understand that nothing extant today is the product of something else that was extant today. You have to go back these branches to
Yeah.
get to, and so humans and chimps, it's only 6 million years. Humans and monkeys, you go back 20 million. Humans and elephants, you go back 50 or 60 or 70 million years, something I don't know exactly. Humans and fish, you can go back
Yeah.
400 million
Yeah.
years, and you get the common ancestor of all bony fish and humans, because their osteichthyes is the clade that contains all the bony fish and all the tetrapods, because it was a fish that became, the tetrapods evolved
Hmm.
from fish. Um, you can go all the way back to fungi, right? We're more related to fungi than to plants. And then you keep going back all the way to Luca, a single-celled organism. And so the reason that they have a hard time with that, because there's so much science in there that's dense, they don't understand how multicellularity emerged, even though we've actually seen that happen in the lab. They don't understand how body plans change. They don't understand embryonic development and like
Hmm.
how what happens while an organism is developing embryonically that bestows it with the form that it has. So there's the problem is that you got like a minute to give them just a morsel, and they're either going to turn their back or they're going to ask for
Yeah.
more, and then it's a slow process of explaining many different things that are going to help them start to be able to grasp what basically the whole field of biology, right? There's no biology without evolution. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
So yeah.
But I really love what all that explanation, because it's kind of like when I try to explain how big is the universe, when I'm trying to explain about, because
Hmm.
most of the question I always got is like, do you believe in aliens? And I'm like, well, it is a really big chance, because all the elements we have here, all the material for life we have here,
Yeah.
they're all spread in the universe, but it is so big. And
Yeah.
I think like we cannot imagine in our head, it is too much information to comprehend
Yeah.
that, dude, it is really hard. And it's not just that it's really hard, because I am putting like the universe astronomy, kind of put it with the biology when I think about, yeah, it is way more difficult, because number one, we need a planet that actually have water, and not just water, we need a planet that have the temperature to actually evaporate our, so we have water in the land. Oh, the kind of life that we have now wouldn't never exist either.
Although that's even that is
So
arguable. What if there's a big sea of ammonia and life evolved in that?
in
I
ammonia,
mean,
yeah,
it's possible.
it is possible, but it's like another thing. Like if you have certain components like carbon between like silicon can probably make life, right? They have like the four ellipses and whatever, but carbon usually will suck everything up before, because it's more abundant, kind
Yeah.
of.
The
So it's
problem, yeah, there's a couple problems. Like, yeah, silicon makes the same tetrahedral geometries as carbon. The two things, though, are number one, silicon is nowhere near as abundant
yeah,
as
exactly,
carbon.
carbon is more abundant. Yeah.
So that's one. And then second, I feel like so carbon nitrogen bonds, carbon oxygen bonds, those kinds of bonds are much more suitable for life than silicon oxygen, silicon nitrogen, because there's orbital mismatch. So carbon and oxygen and nitrogen are all on n equals 2.
Yeah.
So they're all dealing, it's all 2p orbitals that are the frontier orbitals, as opposed to 3p for the silicon. So that orbital mismatch makes all the, because you have to, like, the thing that's so incredible about carbon is that it makes these molecules. It's got to be able to break bonds and make bonds. You
Make
can't
bonds. Yeah.
have, yeah, you can't have molecules where the bonds are so strong that nothing ever dissociates, and you can't have the bonds weak enough that the molecules aren't stable. So it's just this sweet spot with carbon. I can't imagine life not being carbon based. I can imagine life evolving in a sea of ammonia instead of water, but I cannot imagine life not being carbon based.
And
I just don't see it.
wow, that's so great. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but talking about ammonia, I believe in the past weeks, the Perseverance, the rover Perseverance, just break a stone, and it was like ammonia, whatever kind of particles there.
Hmm.
So, and it was inside that Jezero river, so probably it was life down there, the way you think about. So,
Sure.
it might be. I don't know.
On Mars,
I'm
we're
not
talking about?
sure. On Mars, yeah,
Yeah.
on
I
Mars.
I totally believe that in the early life of Mars that there was microbial life,
Oh yeah,
because yeah,
that's
I
one
just
thing we have to put out there. When we talk about life in other planets, it could be microbes, yeah,
sure.
not a pig, not a monkey.
Yeah.
So
In fact, I bet microbial life is pretty commonplace throughout the universe. Then the question is intelligent life, right? Sentient
yeah,
life. Comparatively, probably a lot more rare, but who knows? Who knows how much there is?
we're only a few million years. There is galaxies that have like double our time, so you never know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you look at yeah, wherever there were population 3 stars, they could have had 10 billion years as opposed to R4 to figure things out. So,
But still, life is pretty hard. You have to have like the right conditions, like to be in the right spot, in the right planet with a right moon to hold us, kind of stable
mhm.
too. So it is
But
really hard.
the thing is, I mean, that's there's some truth to that, of course, but that's also still being a bit anthropomorphic, because or anthropic rather, because so we talk about habitable zones, right? Planets where there can be liquid water on the surface, but then you go over to Europa, right? One of Jupiter's moons, it's freezing cold over there,
But
but the
inside,
tidal forces inside, because it's orbiting so close to Jupiter, heats it up, and there's liquid water in the interior. It's nowhere near the habitable zone of the solar
yeah,
system, so far away, 8 times farther than the habitable zone, but there's liquid water under there, right?
yes,
So there's so many different ways for it to work, that
yeah,
it's just, I bet there's microbes over there, and I
yeah,
hope I'm still alive when we go drill under there and find them.
yeah.
I want to know.
Cassini, Europa Clipper, I think it is, right?
Yeah, Clipper and
Cassini just
Lander.
died. Uh, yeah. So, and it's gonna happen. I think like in 2034. I think it's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
they keep
So.
pushing it back. They keep pushing it
Yeah,
back, but
I
hopefully
made
it'll.
an episode about that, and I think like 2026, hopefully we're flying there, and it takes like 8 years or something to get
Yeah.
there. So hopefully we're alive.
Well,
So
yeah. Then the question is if but the first one, they're just going to orbit Europa and find the place for the lander to land,
yeah,
I think.
I think they're trying to get to, because there is like a little bit of like I like the cross. It's kind of like crack, and it's
Right.
exposing. So they try
There's
to like go through there and grab a little bit of samples out of that first
out of the
before.
plumes, right?
Yeah, exactly. To
Yeah,
see what kind of elements are there, probably some amino acids that might be,
sure.
good for life or something before.
Yeah. And I think they're doing you're using radar to find the thinnest part of the crust. They're just, here's the thinnest part, so let's drill there. We'll land there and
Yeah,
drill there. So
still a few kilometers, I think. So I
probably.
I
Yeah.
don't know how they're gonna do that with a lander, but I'm hopeful, I guess.
They're smart. They'll figure it
They
out.
are pretty smart.
They're
They
smart
land
over there at NASA.
two
Yeah.
freaking cars on a helicopter in Mars that barely have an atmosphere, and still they did it. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they can do it.
Yeah.
Man, I don't want to. We're almost there. I know I don't want to take a lot of time, but at least three main points that you can say that all my audience can actually argue with somebody that comes with their stupid arguments about the Earth is flat and we have no proof about the Earth being round and blah blah blah.
You want the quick and dirty flat Earth debunks?
Yes, please. The way you know
Okay.
how to do it.
So the one that I go to first every time in both of the flat Earth debates, because they have no ability to counter this.
Outer.
When you're in the northern hemisphere, if you look at the north celestial pole, the stars rotate counterclockwise around it. If you do the time lapse, counterclockwise. If you go to the southern hemisphere, they're going clockwise around the southern celestial pole. So on a flat Earth, why would the sky be rotating in different directions depending on where you're standing?
On a plate.
And also, why do some stars disappear or appear depending on your latitude? So latitudes are not concentric circles on a pizza, right? They are what they are on a globe. And so the globe is turning. And so with the one I did with this Witsit guy, I literally took a globe and spun it in his face and asked him, which way is this spinning? Which way is this spinning?
I saw that.
Makes sense, right?
Makes a lot of freaking sense.
Yeah,
they're trying to say like everybody in the South Pole, because they have a light shining into it that will cover the whole pie in the corners and not in the middle.
Right.
What are you saying, dude?
Yeah, that would be my number two, is times of day and night, the distribution of sunlight. I mean, first of all, on a flat Earth, there would never be night. Right. They're arguing that you can see stars, which are supposed to be way further away, whatever the hell they think they are, points on a dome or anything. It's further than the sun, the sun that's supposed to be doing donuts over here. So why does the sun go over here and you suddenly can't see it anymore? Also, why does it remain the same angular size as it goes through the sky and set below the horizon? Why is something going away from you in the sky appear to be going under the earth?
Down.
Right? It's because you're turning. Right? And then the third would be gravity, right? Gravity doesn't make any sense on a flat Earth. Yeah. Gravity is pulling everything to the center of the Earth.
That's the basic of gravity. It's like the more efficient way to have everything closer to the center is a sphere. It's a fucking ball.
Reduction of gravitational potential energy. That's all it is. Yeah.
Dave, holy shit. I have to confess that I was kind of nervous at the beginning, and I kind of feel like I was asking stupid questions, but as soon as I kind of catch up, it's like the third time that I get like a little fan kind of, I don't know. I feel like my first question sucks, but
I don't even remember what it was. I'm sure it was fine.
Forward. So, but man, I really appreciate you. I really gonna tell everybody to go to your channels, because what I do, you guys like. What Dave do is freaking brilliant, and I wish one day I could have the courage to insult them. Man, I'm just kidding. But Dave, please tell us where to find you. You already talked a little bit about your book, where to find it, but please repeat that on all your socials.
Sure. Yeah, Professor Dave Explains on YouTube, and then Dave Explains on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Yeah, I don't even. Check it out if you want. I don't really use them too much. And then the book is called "Is This Wi-Fi Organic? A Guide to Spotting Misleading Science Online."
Man, I love it. You guys can find me in like Curiosidad Cientifica podcast everywhere, and my books are in Amazon, or DM me. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dave.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.